Tennessee Voices listeners and viewers, this is David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the USA Today Network Tennessee and the Tennessean. Today, I'm delighted to bring to you a special conversation. I've invited all candidates for the May 3rd Nashville-Davidson County primary election, to come in and talk to me about their campaigns. A few have agreed to do so. And today we have Jim Todd, who is a candidate for General Sessions Judge, Division 6. Mr. Todd, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And tell me a little bit about why you're running for judge.
Well, I'm 60 years old. I've been doing this a long time, and I want to end my career giving back to the community in a nutshell.
And tell us a little bit about your own experience. We were talking as we were preparing for this. You've got a very clever commercial where you talk about you have the experience to prove the fact that you're ready for this.
Right. So I guess I started off in politics after graduating Vanderbilt, worked for Gore in Washington for 5 years, and then Governor McWhorter for 2 years here in Nashville. Then I went to law school, and then I started in the district attorney's office, where I was a prosecutor for 13 years. And I did enjoy helping police and victims through hard times and being a prosecutor. And then I switched sides and I became a defense attorney. And I've been a defense attorney now for 16 years, so just under 30 years total practice. And I will tell you that switching sides was a great learning experience. It really was an eye-opening experience, and I'm glad that I did it. And then I'm really the only candidate that brings that sort of perspective to the race, having worked both sides, as well as having worked the longest. I also had the pleasure of serving as Nashville's environmental court magistrate for 10 years. That's the court that hears code violations. And that's important because most of the people that go before that court are indigent and unrepresented. And I learned there that it's important for the court to be patient with them, help them along, let them have their say, explain the law to them, because that way they don't feel like they're being abused by the system. They feel like they're being helped by the system. And that's important because General Sessions also has jurisdiction over small claims, civil and landlord-tenant disputes, which for the most part, most people are unrepresented. So that's almost 30 years of experience as a prosecutor, defense attorney, and as a judge, and I think I'm ready.
So you talk a lot about the issue of fairness, and when it comes to really understanding the side of the prosecution and the defense, tell us a little bit about your thinking and how you perceive those. You've been in both roles before, but if you were on the court as a General Sessions judge, how might that affect the way that you view those different arguments?
Well, I think a lot of people who are defendants, if we're talking about the criminal side of General Sessions courts, people who are defendants, obviously their liberties at stake, they have rights, presumed innocent when they walk into the courtroom. And whether they're unrepresented, represented by appointed counsel, or represented by retained counsel, I think it's the judge's job to be fair to them and let them, and if they are unrepresented or underrepresented, to make sure that they're not taken advantage of, because the state is always going to have an attorney there. The district attorney is always going to be there. I also think it's important to make sure that, over the years, I've seen a lot of things from both the prosecution side and the defensive side. And so I can often sense out when things may be unfair. Sometimes, police overstep their bounds and stops get called into question, searches get called into question. And in my 30 years, both as a prosecutor and defense attorney, I think having worked on both sides helps me to understand the law better. I've argued cases in front of the Court of Criminal Appeals. I've represented people in federal court as far as West Virginia. And so knowing the law and understanding the constitutional aspects of criminal procedure and the rules of evidence is very important, whether you're charged with misdemeanor theft or you're charged with murder. And so I think that's very important for a judge to understand the issues.
I'd like to ask judicial candidates, I've been doing interviews with judicial candidates for many years, both here and in Florida, where I previously lived, about how, what are the toughest decisions they've had to make that have been those that have led to overcoming a challenge for you. How do you deal with adversity? How do you deal with the issue of tough decisions, to get a sense of your own thought process?
Well, nobody likes to go to court. It's not a happy place. And again, in General Sessions, you have the civil side and the criminal side. So let's talk about the criminal side first. A longtime detective friend of mine named Larry Feller told me a story that when he first got hired, his sergeant took him and locked him in a jail cell for 4 hours, left him there. When he came back, he said, "How'd you like that?" And Larry Flair said, "I didn't like that at all." And the sergeant said, well, you better damn well make sure you're right before you do that. And so taking away somebody's liberty and putting them in jail is a very difficult thing. I had to do that sometimes when I'm an environmental court magistrate. You don't want to do it. It's something that doesn't make you happy. And it's really obviously something you have to weigh, public safety versus the ability to rehabilitate. And so as a judge, hopefully the attorneys are helping you. You have to try to figure out what's causing this person to commit this criminal act. Is it mental health? Is it substance abuse? Is it poverty? What's the reason? And if you can fix the reason without incarceration, then maybe you can stop the criminal side from going further. Sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes public safety weighs out and you have to try to rehabilitate while incarcerated. So that's probably the toughest issue you ever have to face sitting on the bench. And the second issue on the civil side, if you're sued by Vanderbilt or Macy's or General Motors and you have an attorney, but the person who's being sued doesn't have an attorney. Maybe you're a contractor and you're suing the person whose house you worked on. Money is important too. And putting a judgment on somebody that can follow them for a long time is obviously a very big decision. And then obviously evicting somebody from their home in landlord-tenant disputes. So, like I said, nobody likes to come to court. It's not a happy place. And some of the decisions that are made there affect people's lives, not only that day, but for days and months and years to come. So you have to really think things through and make tough decisions.
For you personally, is there any decision in your mind, not necessarily in the court itself, that let you grow as a person and has made you really perhaps wiser, so to speak, to be able to assume this position?
Yes, not necessarily in the courtroom, though. I can tell you story after story after story of my experiences over the 30 years. And one of them that rings out to me was when I was a prosecutor. I was prosecuting a young man, and I had prosecuted him before for aggravated robbery. He'd served time, he'd gotten out, and then he got picked up again on another robbery that turned into a murder. And the detective called me up, and I went up and met with him. And I was talking with him, and I said to him, I'm not going to mention his name. I said, hey, I thought we had you turned around, but now you're out and you've committed another robbery that led to a murder. Why were you robbing this guy? And he looked at me and he was like 18 years old, young guy. He looked at me and he said, Mr. Todd, I was trying to get money to get my mother and my brother out of the projects. And that was a punch in the face. It really was a wake-up call for me as a prosecutor. And it was really kind of then that I realized that, that people have real serious problems that can't make it. And they turn to crime in an effort to make their life better. And a lot of people don't understand that that's the case, but sometimes that is the case. And that's when it's not just the goal of judges, it's not just the goal of lawyers, but it's really the goal of people to try to help people that have those type of problems. And the saddest part of that story is that young man went to serve 15 years in the Department of Corrections on a second-degree murder case, but not soon after that, his younger brother got arrested for a murder. So, you see these type of things in your experiences, and they have a deep effect on you. And I'm 60 years old. I've been doing this 30 years, and I used to think I knew everything. Well, I don't. Even in this campaign, going to the Black churches and going to some communities that I don't often go to, I still learned that there are a lot of issues out there that are really, really, really sensitive and resonate with certain parts of the community. One of those is bail reform. People get stuck in jail because they can't make bail. And I'm the only candidate that sent a bail reform package to the Metro Council for their consideration. Going back to this young man I talked about, that inspired me to get involved in the Juvenile Justice Reform Commission in the 1990s, which I was a member of. And then when I became a defense attorney, I saw how the Drug-Free School Zone Act was disproportionately affecting minorities in Davidson County. And so I started pushing the legislature to reform that, and they fortunately have. So it's those type of issues that you see while practicing law that I think people almost have a duty to try to address. And I've tried over the last 30 years to do that.
Jim Todd, I want to thank you so much for your time speaking with me. Again, Jim Todd is candidate for General Sessions Judge, Division 6. And are there any final words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with our audience before we adjourn?
I don't know if it's a word of wisdom, but I'm just going to echo what you said. These judgeships are important. People don't like to go to court, and normally they don't go to court. But my wife says that judges are like emergency room doctors. You don't ever want to go there, but when you do go there, you hope you have a good one. So, public safety, bail reform, rehabilitation are all important issues that people like to talk about, but they don't go to the polls to vote about. So please go vote. Early voting ends today. May 3rd is election day. And thank you for what you're doing to help that.
Well, thank you very much. May you stay well and healthy. And I'm grateful again
Thank you.
for your time.
Well,
Have a
thank
good
you for
day.
your time. Have a good day.